Usually when we talk about solving a problem, like fixing something that's broken, there's this expectation of absolute precision.
Right, like it should be an equation.
Exactly. Almost like engineering. I mean, think about it. You break your arm, right? You go to the hospital, they take an x-ray, and there it is.
You see that jagged white line right across the bone?
Yeah, the doctor just points at it with a pen and says, well, there it is. That is the problem.
It's incredibly binary. I mean, it's visible, it's undeniable, and frankly, it's deeply comforting.
It really is.
We love things to be visible. We want to be able to categorize our pain so we can, apply a specific mechanical fix to it.
Right. You put a cast on the broken bone.
You put the cast on, you wait 6 weeks, the bone knits back together, problem solved.
Clean and simple. But then, and this is where it gets wild, you step into the world of human psychology. You step into the vast, winding landscape of our own minds, and suddenly that x-ray machine is completely useless.
Oh, utterly useless. We're looking at a diagnostic landscape that is, honestly, incredibly murky.
It's just muddy waters. And I want you listening to this right now to just pause and think about this. Have you ever just stopped and realized that your own brain can be like an incredibly exhausting place to live?
It really can be a battlefield.
Yeah. I mean, you could be just sitting on your couch on a Tuesday evening. Objectively, you are perfectly safe.
The doors are locked. The temperature is fine.
Right. There are no predators in the living room. But inside your head, you are fighting a massive multi-front war.
You're relitigating an argument you had with a friend like 5 years ago.
Yes. Or you're spiraling into a panic over a vague email your boss sent 3 hours ago. It's nonstop.
It is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters.
Right.
And the reason it's so frustrating, the reason that couch feels like a battlefield is because the thing creating the exhaustion is the exact same tool you are using to try and understand the exhaustion.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You're using the mind to try and fix the mind. It's like trying to see your own eyeball without a mirror. You are trapped inside the apparatus that is malfunctioning.
Which is a terrifying thought, honestly. Yeah. But also, it's incredibly validating. And that is exactly what we are getting into today. So welcome to this deep dive.
I am very excited for this one.
Me too.
Okay.
Because today, we are taking on a massive, profound mission. We've gathered this huge synthesis of core teachings from the spiritual teacher Eckhart Tolle.
Right, pulling the most vital concepts from his landmark works, like The Power of Now and A New Earth.
Exactly. But here is our specific mission for you listening today. We want to cut violently through the abstract, sometimes floaty spiritual jargon that usually surrounds these topics.
Yeah, we aren't here to just burn incense and nod thoughtfully.
Definitely not. We want to extract the intensely practical, actionable insights. Like, how do we actually escape the prison of our own thoughts?
How do we dissolve this deeply problematic thing called the ego?
Right. And genuinely, not just on a motivational poster, but in our actual messy daily lives, live in the present moment.
I'm so glad you framed it that way because it's crucial to set the tone right away here. The source material we're analyzing today isn't just about, feeling a little more peaceful.
Or remembering to take a deep breath when your inbox is full.
Exactly. It's not a temporary stress relief hack. These teachings offer a radical, fundamental reevaluation of human psychology. It breaks down the architecture of our suffering and how we actually interact with reality itself.
It's a complete paradigm shift.
It requires a total shift in how you view your own existence. If you really absorb what we're going to discuss, you can't unsee it.
It really is a point of no return for how you view yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And to tease where we are eventually heading with all of this, like the absolute peak of the mountain, the source material ultimately drives toward this incredible paradigm-shattering quote.
Oh, I love this quote.
It states, "Happiness is not in what you do, but in the feeling you put into doing it."
Which completely flips the script on how literally every single one of us has been taught to live.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
We are all taught to chase the what, the job, the partner, the house.
And once I get the what, then I'll get the feeling.
Right. So our job today is to figure out exactly how to achieve that internal feeling, regardless of the external what.
But to get to that feeling, to understand how to cultivate it, we first have to play detective. We have to understand not just why we suffer so much, but where we suffer.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this concept hits like a ton of bricks.
It really does. The sources make a very bold, almost counterintuitive claim right out of the gate. They say we almost never actually suffer in the present moment. We suffer in our concept of time.
Right, so the central argument is that the present moment is quite literally all we have.
Exactly. The past is merely a memory. It's just a trace of former present moments stored in your neurons.
And the future is just an expectation, right? It's a simulation your brain is running.
Neither of them actually exist right now.
But if I look at my own life, and probably the lives of everyone listening, the human brain acts like a terrible, malfunctioning time machine.
A very glitchy time machine.
Yeah, it's a time machine that only ever takes us to visit profoundly painful pasts or incredibly anxious, terrifying futures.
Meanwhile, our physical bodies are just stuck sitting in traffic.
Or standing in line at the grocery store.
Yeah.
Physically existing only in the present.
That is a perfect, terrifyingly accurate metaphor. The mind is a malfunctioning time machine. And the teachings identify this phenomenon as being a slave to psychological time.
Psychological time, that's a great term.
Now, we have to look at why this happens from a psychological and evolutionary standpoint. The human brain evolved as a survival mechanism.
Right, to keep us from getting eaten.
Exactly. Its primary job isn't to make you happy. Its primary job is to keep you alive. And to do that, it constantly scans the past for threats like what hurt me before so I can avoid it, and projects into the future to anticipate new threats.
Like what could kill me tomorrow?
Yes. So it's basically a highly advanced threat detection software.
That we can't turn off.
We can't. But in the modern world, where we aren't generally running from actual physical predators, that software just turns inward. Obsessing over the past or the future becomes the absolute root cause of our daily suffering.
Think back to that example of sitting in traffic. Let's break down the mechanics of that suffering for a second.
Okay, yeah.
In that exact moment, your body is simply sitting in a padded chair, in a climate-controlled metal box, with a steering wheel in front of it.
There is music playing. You are objectively safe.
Right. That is the reality of the present moment. But your mind is an hour in the future.
In your mind, you are standing in a conference room, getting yelled at by your boss for missing the morning meeting.
Exactly. You are experiencing the very real physiological stress, the cortisol spike, the racing heart, the sweaty palms of an event that hasn't actually happened yet.
And honestly, might not even happen at all.
You have abandoned the perfectly safe reality of the cur. No, just to go live in a phantom horror movie your brain just directed.
That is so agonizingly relatable. We literally torture ourselves with ghosts.
We really do. Yeah. So if we are trapped in this terrible time machine, how do we hit the emergency stop button?
How do we force the doors open and step back into reality?
Right. Because the sources give us some fascinating psychological gateways to force the mind back to the present. And one of the primary techniques is shifting your attention to your physical body.
Which makes sense, because the body is always entirely present.
Literally feeling the aliveness inside your hands,
Yeah.
or the rhythm of your breath. Because your body cannot exist in the past or the future. It acts as an anchor.
Yes. The mind wanders, but the body stays. By directing your conscious attention to the feeling of your feet on the floor or the subtle energy in your hands, you withdraw consciousness from the mind's time-traveling activity.
You're starving the anxiety of its power source.
Exactly. Your attention is the power source.
Another gateway the sources emphasize, and I absolutely love this one, is using nature as a shortcut to the present.
Oh, nature is the ultimate teacher for this.
Have you ever just sat and watched an animal in the wild, or even just really looked at a massive old oak tree?
They are 100% present.
They don't have an ego, and they don't judge. I mean, a squirrel gathering acorns isn't sitting on a branch having an existential crisis, regretting that it didn't gather enough acorns yesterday.
It's not reading the farmer's almanac worrying about the frost next month.
Right. It simply exists. It acts. It is completely one with the fabric of reality.
The squirrel doesn't have psychological time. And that brings us to one of the most powerful, immediate grounding exercises in the entire text.
The grounding question.
Yes. When you feel that wave of overwhelm hitting you when the time machine is spinning out of control, you are supposed to stop and ask yourself one specific question. Do I actually have a problem right now?
Not in 5 minutes.
Not tomorrow morning when the bills are due, right? This exact microsecond.
And the answer is almost always no, isn't it?
Almost universally, yes.
Oh.
If you are breathing, if you are not currently falling off a cliff or in immediate physical danger, the answer is no.
I mean, you have challenges to navigate, sure.
But the suffering part of the problem only exists in your psychological time.
Okay, but wait. Let me push back on this a little bit, because I can hear the skeptical listener practically screaming through their headphones right now.
Bring it on! It's a necessary pushback.
This sounds beautiful if you live in a monastery. In the real world, if I don't plan for the future, how do I pay my rent?
How do you keep your job?
Yeah, if I just sit under an oak tree and focus on the feeling of my hands, my electricity is going to get shut off. Are the sources seriously suggesting that we should just ignore tomorrow entirely and live like squirrels?
Because that sounds like a fast track to ruining your life.
It really does.
That is the most common and, frankly, the most necessary pushback to these concepts. If we misinterpret this, it just sounds like an excuse for profound irresponsibility.
Exactly.
But the teachings make a very sharp, crucial distinction between two different ways of interacting with the future. We have to separate practical clock time from toxic psychological time.
Okay, define the difference for me. What is clock time?
Clock time is logistical. It's functional. Clock time is sitting down on Sunday with a spreadsheet and making a budget for the month.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's scheduling a dentist appointment for Tuesday at 3 p.m. It's looking at a mistake you made on a project yesterday, analyzing the data, and adjusting your strategy so you don't repeat the error tomorrow.
Right, so it's using time as a tool.
Exactly. You step into the concept of time, you use it to navigate the physical world, and then you step out of it.
It's just mechanics.
Mechanics. Psychological time, on the other hand, is when time becomes tied to your identity and your emotional state.
Oh, I see.
It's stewing in endless, paralyzing anxiety about the concept of being broke, tying your entire self-worth as a human being to that future fear.
Or lying awake at 3 a.m. beating yourself up emotionally for the mistake you made yesterday.
Calling yourself an idiot, internalizing the failure. Clock time solves problems in the real world. Psychological time creates a secondary layer of agonizing suffering on top of the real world.
That makes a massive amount of sense. Clock time is logistics. Psychological time is identity.
You can use the spreadsheet to plan your rent without sobbing over the spreadsheet.
Right, and that seamlessly connects to another major concept in the source material, which explores the mechanics of acceptance.
The end of internal resistance.
Yeah, it argues that when you completely accept what is happening right now, when you stop demanding that this moment be something else, internal resistance entirely disappears, and a profound peace replaces it.
Precisely. The friction between how reality is and how your mind demands reality should be is where all the heat and pain comes from.
So how do we stop that friction?
Well, this introduces a critical psychological mechanism, the concept of the observer. To accept the present, you have to realize that you are not your thoughts.
You step back.
You step back and watch your thoughts rather than being utterly fused with them.
What does that actually look like in practice, though?
Well, most people are entirely seamlessly fused with the voice in their head. The mind generates a thought, and they immediately assume that thought is the absolute truth of who they are.
So if the voice in their head says, I'm a massive failure and everyone hates me,
They don't see it as a thought. They see it as an objective reality. They become the failure.
they fuse with it.
Right. The observer is the deeper part of your consciousness. It's the part of you that steps back, notices the voice saying, I'm a failure, and says, oh, isn't that interesting? My mind is producing a very negative self-critical thought right now. I wonder why it's doing that.
It creates distance. You aren't the storm. You are the sky watching the storm happen.
That's a beautiful way to put it. You are the vast container in which the thoughts are simply passing weather. And the power of that distance cannot be overstated.
Because the very second you realize you are lost in thought, you're actually no longer trapped in it.
Awareness itself is the escape hatch.
Wow.
If you are daydreaming or spiraling into anxiety, the moment you consciously say, I am spiraling right now, you have broken the spell.
You are awake.
You are, by definition, awake in that moment. You've stepped out of the time machine and back into the room.
It's almost like that realization you have when you wake up inside a lucid dream. The dream is still happening around you, but it suddenly loses its power over you because you know it's just a projection.
Exactly. It's just a movie playing on a screen.
And I want to take a second to emphasize how incredibly vital this specific practice is for you, the listener, living in this exact moment in history.
Oh, it's more important now than ever.
Think about the modern architecture of our society. It is actively hostile to the present moment.
We have smartphones constantly buzzing with notifications.
And 24-hour news cycles that are algorithmically designed to keep us terrified of the future or outraged about the past.
Our entire digital environment is a multi-billion-dollar machine perfectly engineered to pull us out of the now.
And throw us straight into psychological time. No wonder everyone is so utterly exhausted. Relearning how to anchor yourself, whether through feeling your breath or stepping back as the observer, isn't just some poetic spiritual hobby.
It's survival.
It is essential mental hygiene for surviving the 21st century.
It truly is. The modern attention economy literally monetizes our distraction. Every time you are pulled away from the present moment, someone makes a fraction of a cent.
So returning to the present is an act of rebellion.
It's a quiet, radical rebellion. It's reclaiming the sovereignty of your own mind.
Okay, so let's follow the logical thread here. If the present moment is supposedly this sanctuary of peace, and we have these tools to get there, why is it so incredibly agonizingly hard to stay there?
Why do we constantly get yanked back?
Yeah. Why do we get pulled back into the time machine the second we stop paying attention?
The sources are very clear on this. It's because of that voice in our head we just talked about.
The voice doesn't want to be quiet.
It constantly drags us away, and the texts give this voice a name, the ego. We need to unmask exactly what this thing is.
And this is where the teachings get incredibly forensic about the mechanics of human unhappiness, because we have to redefine what the word ego means.
Right. In common language, we use ego to mean arrogance. Like, oh, that guy has a huge ego. He's so full of himself.
But in this psychological framework, it means something much deeper and way more insidious.
The fundamental premise is that you are not your thoughts. The incessant chattering voice in your head is a false self.
It is a constructed entity made of conditioning, memories, and societal expectations.
And here is where it gets really interesting for me, because the way the sources describe how the ego operates, it sounds exactly like a highly insecure, deeply toxic friend.
Oh my goodness, yes. You know the exact type of person I'm talking about.
The friend who constantly invents drama out of thin air.
Who picks fights with strangers over nothing. And who demands constant, exhausting validation just to prove they exist.
The ego operates on the exact same principles. The text highlights that the ego survives purely through comparison.
It has no intrinsic sense of self-worth.
None at all. It only feels strong if it feels superior to someone else, like having a better job or a nicer house.
Or, strangely, it even thrives if it feels uniquely inferior to someone else.
Yes, it just desperately wants to be special, even if that means being the most uniquely miserable person in the room.
That's a profound point. The ego is essentially a mechanism of separation. It cannot survive in unity.
It needs a rigid boundary. It needs a me that is distinctly, aggressively different from you.
Because if there's no other to compare itself against, the ego feels like it is dying.
And the texts reveal the ego's absolute favorite, most heavily utilized strategy to maintain that illusion of separation: complaining.
Ah, complaining.
Complaining is described as the ultimate high-calorie food for the ego. Whenever you complain, you are instantly turning yourself into a victim and casting the rest of the world or specific other people as the villains.
But hold on, let's be totally honest here. The sources say complaining is the food of the ego, and that it creates suffering. But sometimes complaining feels really good.
Oh, it feels fantastic sometimes.
If you've had a terrible week, going to happy hour and gossiping with a coworker about how breathtakingly incompetent your boss is feels like bonding. It's a massive relief.
It is.
So why do we so eagerly lean into being the victim if it supposedly makes us so miserable? What is the psychological payoff?
The payoff is an incredibly powerful instant sense of identity. You have to understand that the ego equates nothingness or a lack of defined identity with literal death.
It is terrified of just being pure, undefined consciousness.
Exactly. When you sit at that happy hour and complain about your boss, you are instantly drawing a sharp, impenetrable boundary between me, the righteous, hardworking, innocent victim, and them, the incompetent, malicious wrongdoers.
So in that moment of intense complaining, your ego feels incredibly solid.
It feels safe. It feels right. The rush you feel isn't true joy. It's the ego gorging itself on superiority.
Wow. It's an identity hit, a quick fix of self-definition.
A sugar rush for the false self.
And that explains another massive pillar of the ego's strategy, the desperate, destructive need to be right.
Oh, the need to be right is exhausting.
The sources describe holding on to anger and resentment as swallowing poison and hoping the other person dies, all just to make the ego feel right.
And the need to be right in an argument is entirely useless to our actual happiness, yet we defend it like our lives depend on it.
We do, but why?
Because to the ego, its life does depend on it. Think about the lengths we will go to in order to win a trivial argument.
We will literally destroy our own peace of mind.
We'll ruin long-term relationships with people we love, elevate our blood pressure to dangerous levels just to win an argument about a political post on social media.
Or how to correctly load the dishwasher.
Exactly. The ego would rather be right and utterly miserable than admit it was wrong and return to a state of peace.
Because admitting you were wrong dissolves that rigid boundary. It softens the identity.
Which also beautifully explains why we are so obsessed with attaching our identity to external things.
Oh, like objects, names, titles, social status.
We wear them like heavy, elaborate masks. We walk around saying, I am a senior vice president of marketing.
Or I'm the owner of this luxury electric car.
I am a person who only drinks organic coffee.
The teachings point out that these are just temporary roles you are playing in the physical world. They're completely arbitrary labels, not your true underlying essence.
But we defend the scratch on the luxury car as if our own skin was cut.
That's the perfect illustration of egoic attachment. The ego looks at the car and says, if this car is special and expensive and I own it, therefore I am special and expensive, I matter.
But of course the car gets old or someone buys a nicer one and suddenly the ego is starving again, plunging you back into suffering.
Because the external world can never provide a permanent foundation for your identity. It's constantly changing.
So what is the antidote? How do we stop this toxic friend from running our lives?
The teachings offer a surprisingly simple, almost terrifying solution. Embracing the phrase, I don't know.
Just admitting ignorance.
Yeah. The sources state that deeply admitting I don't know is the actual beginning of true wisdom.
It's terrifying to the ego, yes, because saying I don't know requires stripping away the mask.
It requires dropping the heavy armor of having an opinion on everything, of having to be the smartest person in the room.
To the ego, admitting ignorance or a lack of absolute certainty feels like stepping off a cliff. It's a profound threat to its survival.
But to your true self, your deeper essence, saying I don't know, is the ultimate freedom.
It is a massive relief. You no longer have a rigid intellectual identity that you have to frantically protect from all sides.
You can just be open. You become a space where learning can actually happen, rather than a fortress defending old knowledge.
And the incredible byproduct of that is internal peace. The texts argue that when you have no internal enemies, meaning when your ego isn't constantly fighting to protect its fragile image from being insulted, external enemies suddenly become illusions.
You stop seeing everyone around you as a potential threat to your status.
Exactly. The battle was never really with the outside world. It was always the ego fighting to maintain its own borders.
I want the listener to just imagine for a second how incredibly liberating that would be in their daily life.
Just dropping the armor.
Yeah. Think about your workplace, or maybe your extended family's group chat. What if you could just drop the exhausting, heavy burden of needing to always be the smart one? The one who is technically right. The one who is the noble victim of everyone else's incompetence.
Imagine reading a snarky text message and realizing that the burning, acidic desire rising in your chest to fire back a sarcastic response isn't actually you.
It's not you. It's just your ego demanding a treat. It's begging for a snack of conflict.
And you can just choose not to feed it. You can just put the phone down.
It's a very hungry entity, and starving it requires immense presence. And that concept of feeding leads perfectly and darkly into the next major revelation in the source material.
We've established that the ego needs food to survive. It needs negative energy to maintain its shark boundaries.
So where does it get that energy from? It draws from a deep, hidden well inside of us, our past trauma, our unprocessed grief, and our accumulated negativity.
Which brings us to perhaps the most mind-bending concept in all of Tolley's work. Let's delve into the anatomy of our suffering.
The sources introduced this phenomenon called the pain body. And I have to say, when I first read about this, it fundamentally changed how I view my own bad moods.
It's a game changer.
The text described the pain body as an accumulated mass of old, unresolved emotional suffering that literally lives inside us.
It's a brilliant and somewhat eerie conceptualization. Tolley asks us to visualize the pain body almost as an autonomous, parasitic entity.
Like a separate being.
Yeah, it's a semi-independent energy field made entirely of old emotion. Think of it as the emotional residue of every painful experience, every rejection, every trauma you've ever had that was not fully faced, processed, and accepted in the exact moment it happened.
Because you pushed it away or suppressed it, it didn't dissipate. It crystallized and took up residence inside your nervous system.
The analogy I use in my own head is that I picture the pain body as a monstrous, angry, feral, stray cat that lives in the pitch-black basement of my mind.
A feral cat in the basement. I love that.
Right. And most of the time, the cat is asleep. I'm going about my day, I'm happy, I'm functional. The basement door is closed. But that cat gets hungry. It has a dormant stage and an active stage.
And the teachings explain that the pain body feeds on negative thoughts and negative emotional reactions to sustain itself.
It actually wants you to feel bad because your misery is its lifeblood.
Every single time we dwell on a negative thought, every time we allow a grievance to play on a loop in our heads, we are essentially walking down the basement stairs and leaving a bowl of warm milk out for this monster.
We are ensuring it grows stronger, and we are guaranteeing it never ever leaves.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it.
Right.
And we need to look closely at what that milk actually consists of in our daily behavior, what wakes the cat up.
Often, it's triggered by something incredibly small. A specific tone of voice your partner uses, a scene in a movie, a passing thought about an old failure.
The pain body awakens and immediately seeks to hijack your internal monologue. Suddenly, you aren't just slightly annoyed. You are engulfed in a dark, heavy cloud of despair or rage.
And the primary mechanism by which we feed it, the mechanism that generates that negative energy, is resistance.
Resistance to reality.
Exactly. The text makes a profound equation. Resistance to reality creates pain. Stress, anxiety, and misery are literally defined as the mind violently wanting to be in the future while the body is trapped in the past or present.
Or the mind screaming that the present moment is unacceptable.
The intense internal friction between what is currently happening and what your mind demands should be happening is the exact friction that generates the dark energy the pain body consumes.
Now, this is a very delicate area, and I want to make sure we get this right for the listener, because the sources draw a very sharp line between natural human emotion and the suffering manufactured by the pain body.
This is critical.
They point out that sadness itself is not wrong. Let's be clear. If you lose someone you love, if you experience a massive professional failure or a heartbreak, you should feel sad.
You should grieve.
That is a natural, clean, intensely human emotion. You're supposed to feel it. But the text argues that the pain body takes over when we create a mental story around that raw emotion.
This is the crucial distinction. We have to separate the clean emotion from the toxic narrative.
Right.
The clean emotion is simply the physical and energetic experience of the present moment. Like, I just lost my job, I feel a profound tightness in my chest, I feel grief, and I feel fear.
If you simply allow yourself to feel that raw sensation without judging it, that emotion will rise like a wave, it'll reach a peak, and eventually it will break and pass.
It might take time and it moves. The pain body, however, hates that. It wants the pain to last forever. So it hijacks the mind and adds a sprawling, catastrophic story to the raw emotion.
Like, I lost my job because the universe is inherently against me.
I will always be a failure. Everyone else is succeeding while I am drowning. Nothing will ever go right for me, just like when I failed at that project 10 years ago.
It weaponizes the past to guarantee misery in the future.
Precisely. The clean emotion is a wound that is healing. The story is you picking at the scab every single day, keeping the wound open and bleeding so the pain body can continue to feed on the pain.
Which brings up a really difficult, somewhat controversial concept from the teachings. The texts talk about transforming suffering into peace through total unconditional acceptance of reality, even the worst situations.
Yes.
And I have to push back here on behalf of anyone listening who has been through real severe trauma. I'm talking about abuse, systemic injustice, sudden tragic loss.
Of course.
If someone is deeply suffering from something objectively horrific, is telling them to just accept it, actually dismissive of their real-world pain, doesn't total acceptance sound a bit like toxic positivity?
Does it encourage people to just roll over and become a doormat?
Yeah, to let bad people get away with bad things.
That is the most important question we can ask, and it addresses the single most dangerous misunderstanding of these teachings. We have to very carefully parse the philosophical difference between passive submission and active acceptance.
Because they are not the same thing.
In fact, they are opposites. Acceptance, in the context of these teachings, absolutely does not mean you endorse what happened. It doesn't mean you look at an injustice and say, oh, I'm glad this terrible thing occurred.
Or, this is fine, I won't try to change this abusive situation.
Exactly.
Okay, so what does it actually mean? Because the word accept usually implies giving up.
Active acceptance means you stop mentally and emotionally fighting the undeniable historical fact that the thing has already happened. It is already woven into the fabric of the now.
Oh, I see.
By screaming internally, this shouldn't be happening, this is unfair, you are essentially arguing with reality. And as the saying goes, when you argue with reality, you lose 100% of the time.
Let's use an analogy for this.
Let's use the rainstorm analogy. It's like you are walking outside and a massive freezing rainstorm suddenly hits. Passive submission, giving up, would be lying down in the mud and saying, I guess I just deserve to drown in the rain.
Arguing with reality, which is what most of us do, is standing there getting soaked, shaking your fist at the sky, screaming it shouldn't be raining.
The forecast said it would be sunny. This is completely unfair.
You are getting wet either way, but now you are also filled with rage, raising your blood pressure and exhausting yourself.
Active acceptance is simply stating the undeniable truth. It is raining right now. That is the reality of this moment.
And only once you stop resisting the reality of the rain, drop the anger and accept the wetness, can you take clear, highly effective action.
You can calmly open an umbrella or you can walk indoors.
Oh, wow. That makes perfect sense. The acceptance isn't about liking the rain, it's about acknowledging it so you can deal with it efficiently.
Exactly.
I think of it like being stuck in a massive gridlock traffic jam on the highway when you are running late for a crucial flight. We've all been there.
The absolute worst.
The stress, the absolute agony you feel in that moment, it isn't actually coming from the traffic itself. The cars parked around you aren't physically hurting you. You are sitting in a highly engineered, climate-controlled box.
You probably have a comfortable seat and a dip dive playing. You are physically fine.
The agony, the chest-tightening stress is purely generated by your mind violently rejecting the reality of the traffic. It's the story. I can't miss this flight. If I miss it, my vacation is ruined. Why did that idiot cause an accident up ahead? My life is a disaster.
Yes, the mind is generating suffering.
But if you practice active acceptance, I am here. The cars are not moving. I cannot phase my car through solid matter. I will likely miss the flight.
The physical situation remains completely identical. You are still in the car.
But the internal suffering completely vanishes. The pain body is starved of its fuel. And from that place of calm acceptance, you can then take intelligent action.
You can pick up your phone and calmly call the airline to rebook rather than smashing your hand against the steering wheel.
That is exactly it. You eliminate the secondary suffering. And the teachings add another incredibly powerful layer to this process of unhooking from the pain body. Forgiveness.
Ah, forgiveness. The text notes a profound truth about holding grudges. Forgiveness is not a favor you do for the person who wronged you.
No, it's entirely for yourself. It is the act of removing the fuel from your own internal fire.
When you hold a deep grudge, when you obsess over how someone wronged you 10 years ago, you aren't punishing them. They might be sitting on a beach somewhere perfectly happy.
You are exclusively keeping your own pain body fed, active, and toxic.
Letting go of a grievance is not letting the other person off the hook. It is an internal victory. It opens up massive reserves of new, creative energy that were previously being burned just to maintain the anger.
Okay, this is a massive paradigm shift. But so far, we've looked really deeply inward. We've talked exclusively about our own isolated internal landscape, how our view of time is warped, how our own personal ego operates like an insecure friend.
And how our solitary pain body is a stray cat we keep feeding in our own mental basement.
But none of us live in a vacuum. We don't live in isolated caves. These internal dysfunctions don't just stay neatly inside us.
They explode outward.
They explode outward, and they violently collide with other people's egos and other people's pain bodies. And that brings us to the real stress test of these teachings: mirrors and presence in our relationships.
Yes, this is where the rubber meets the road. Because, frankly, it's relatively easy to sit alone in a quiet room on a meditation cushion, focus on your breathing, and feel very enlightened and peaceful.
The true, undeniable test of your actual presence is what happens when you step off that cushion and have to interact with your family or your romantic partner or difficult coworker.
Relationships are the ultimate crucible for the ego.
And the sources set a staggeringly high bar for relationships right away. They draw a harsh distinction between what we typically call love and what actual love is.
The texts argue that most of what we call love is actually just ego-based attachment.
It's merely a transactional exchange. It's an unspoken contract that says, I will love you and provide you with affection as long as you continue to behave in a way that makes my ego feel secure, validated, and good about myself.
And the moment you threaten my ego, I will withdraw my love and attack you.
That's terrifying, but so true. True love, on the other hand, is described as the profound ability to recognize your own underlying formless essence in someone else. It's consciousness recognizing itself.
And how do we actually practice recognizing that essence? How do we get past the transactional ego? The teachings give us the primary, most powerful tool for this: deep listening.
Now, everyone thinks they know how to listen, but what the text describes is radical.
It means listening to another human being with your entire presence without the chattering inner voice immediately criticizing what they're saying.
Or judging them.
Or frantically preparing your own clever response. It is framed as the single greatest, most healing gift you can possibly give another human being.
And it is so breathtakingly rare today. I observe this all the time, even in myself. Most modern conversations aren't actually listening at all. They're just two people taking turns talking at each other.
They're silently reloading their verbal weapons.
Just waiting for the other person to pause or take a breath so they can take their turn to shoot. We aren't absorbing. We're just waiting to inject our own ego, our own story, our own better anecdote into the space.
Deep listening is actively choosing to put the weapon down. It's letting the other person's words land in a space of total silence within you.
It requires completely relinquishing the ego's desperate need to control the narrative.
When you judge others, which the texts vehemently warn against you, aren't actually assessing them objectively. You're just using them as a convenient prop to reinforce your own ego's boundaries.
Like, look how flawed and messy their life is. Therefore, my life is superior.
Judging is always an egoic defense mechanism.
But let's dive into the deepest end of the pool here, because this next concept is a massive, jagged pill to swallow.
Okay, let's hear it.
The sources claim that all of our relationships act as mirrors. They reflect back to us the exact parts of ourselves that we haven't healed yet.
The mirror concept.
Now, I can practically hear the listener throwing their hands up in the air and pushing back right now. Like, hold on. If my coworker is being a completely unreasonable, passive-aggressive, toxic nightmare, how on earth is that a reflection of my unhealed trauma?
Their toxicity is their problem. It's a fact of their personality, not mine.
Right.
It is an incredibly challenging concept to accept because the ego immediately violently rejects it. The ego says, no, I am the innocent victim. They are the villain.
Let's carefully break down this mirror analogy using a specific real-world hypothetical. Let's say you have a coworker, we'll call him Dave.
Okay, Dave.
Dave sends you an incredibly snarky, passive-aggressive email, and he CCs your boss on it to make you look bad.
Classic Dave.
Classic Dave move. Now, the text isn't saying that Dave's action is your fault. Dave's action, the typing of the snarky email, is indeed his own. Dave is acting out of his own deeply insecure ego and his own active pain body.
However, your reaction to the email, the fact that your heart rate spikes to 130 beats per minute, the intense, blinding anger, the defensiveness, the fact that you lie awake staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., vividly obsessing over how to destroy Dave in your reply.
That massive, overwhelming reaction is 100% yours.
I see the distinction. The email is Dave's, the suffering is mine.
Precisely. If someone's behavior triggers a massive, disproportionate emotional reaction in you, it means their behavior has successfully snagged on a hook inside you.
It has hit a deep insecurity, an ego attachment to your professional reputation, or an unhealed wound about not feeling respected that was already living inside you long before Dave ever hit send.
If you were totally, perfectly present and free of egoic attachment, you would read Dave's email and it would just be pixels on a screen.
You would look at it and say, wow, Dave's experiencing a lot of internal suffering and insecurity to feel the need to send this.
You would see it as his problem, not your existential threat. The fact that it hooks you so violently means there is something in your own basement that needs healing.
The difficult relationship is merely holding up the mirror so you can finally see your own hook.
That completely, fundamentally changes how you view every conflict in your life. Instead of seeing people as enemies, you start seeing them as extremely irritating spiritual teachers.
And it perfectly explains the teaching's rule about changing others. Don't try to change them. You can't control Dave. You can't rewire his brain.
Change your own awareness, unhook yourself, and the external world will naturally adjust around you.
Exactly. And the actual mechanics of conflict resolution are fascinating when viewed through this lens of presence. As the old cliche goes, it truly takes two to tango. But the text states it as a psychological law conflict physically cannot survive if one person maintains total, unyielding mindfulness.
Think about the physics of an argument. An ego needs another ego to push against in order to sustain its energy. It's like a game of tug-of-war.
If someone starts yelling at you, pulling on the rope, and you meet them with pure, unjudging presence instead of defensive ego, if you simply drop your end of the rope, they fall over.
The conflict instantly loses its oxygen. They might yell for another minute, but without the resistance of your ego fighting back, their aggression simply falls flat. It dissolves into the silent space you are providing.
The teachings even suggest that just being deeply present with someone can quietly heal them. It calms their nervous system.
I want you, the listener, to really think about the application of this in your own life today. Consider how transformative it would be to look past the external forms of the people around you.
We get so caught up in the appearances, the annoying verbal tics, the political opinions, the historical baggage we have with our family members.
The texts urge us to look past all that dense outer layer and instead try to focus purely on the shared light of consciousness in their eyes.
To realize that the exact same awareness looking out of your eyes is looking out of theirs.
If you can manage to do that, even for 5 seconds during a tense Thanksgiving dinner with a difficult relative, the entire energetic dynamic of the room shifts.
It softens the entire world. And a crucial counterpart to this relational presence is how we relate to ourselves when there is no one else around.
The teachings make a beautiful point about solitude. Solitude is not loneliness as long as you know how to truly be with yourself.
Loneliness is a state of ego starvation. The ego is panicking because there is no one around to validate it, interact with it, or give it an identity.
Solitude, however, is the profound peace of solitary presence. When you aren't relying on other people to mirror your identity back to you, you can be entirely blissfully at peace in an empty room.
Okay, so we've run through an incredibly intense, transformational gauntlet here.
We really have.
We've learned how to master our warped view of time, stepping out of the time machine. We've analyzed and tamed the toxic friend of the ego.
We've learned how to starve the stray cat pain body in the basement, and we've explored how to bring profound, diffusing presence to our thorniest relationships.
That brings us to the grand finale, the ultimate application. What does daily life actually look like when you manage to put these abstract concepts into practice?
If we succeed at this, what is the end result?
It looks fundamentally, visibly different from how modern society tells us we're supposed to live. Society defines success entirely through external metrics, wealth, status, accumulation, the title on your door.
The teachings redefine success completely. True success, according to this paradigm, isn't about the final outcome at all. It's entirely about the quality of the absolute attention you pour into the present task, regardless of what that task is.
And to help us navigate that, the teachings provide what I think is the single most useful, practical tool in this entire massive synthesis.
It's a brilliantly simple 3-step rule for evaluating any situation you find yourself in. I call it the ultimate spiritual flowchart for literally any problem in human existence.
The rule is do, enjoy, or accept.
In any situation you are facing, no matter how trivial or catastrophic, you must choose one of these 3 options. You can take action to change the situation. Do.
You can fully engage and have fun with the situation as it is, enjoy.
Or, if you cannot change it and you cannot enjoy it, you must make total internal peace with it. Accept.
If you cannot do any of those 3 things, if you refuse to act, refuse to enjoy, and refuse to accept, you are actively, intentionally creating suffering for yourself.
It is brilliant because it genuinely covers every possible base of the human experience. Let's apply it to a classic miserable scenario. You absolutely hate your job. It's draining your soul.
Okay, option 1, do. You can take definitive action. You can update your resume, start interviewing, and quit. Or you can sit down with your boss and negotiate a different role. You change the reality.
If you can't quit because you need the money and your boss won't change your role, you move to option 2. Enjoy. Can you find a way to enjoy the challenge of the work? Can you enjoy the camaraderie with your fellow suffering coworkers? Can you find flow in the mundane tasks?
If the job is so terrible that enjoyment is impossible and you are financially trapped so you cannot quit, you are left with the final, ultimate option. Accept.
You must completely internally accept that this job is your current reality. You do the work with presence, without the heavy, toxic mental narrative of, I hate this, it's unfair, I deserve better. You drop the resistance.
What you absolutely cannot do is the one thing most people choose. Complain.
Complaining violates all 3 rules. It isn't changing the situation, it certainly isn't enjoying it, and it is the exact opposite of accepting it. Complaining is just choosing pure suffering.
I love the absolute lack of loopholes in that flowchart.
But let me ground this again. So what does this all mean for the macro world? If we collectively adopt this mindset, if we truly don't care about the result, if we only care about the peaceful feeling of the present action, won't human progress just grind to a screeching halt?
That's a great point.
Who is going to have the intense, burning drive to build massive suspension bridges or cure complex diseases or launch rockets to Mars if everyone is just contentedly sitting under an oak tree, being present and accepting everything exactly as it is? Doesn't ambition require a little bit of anxiety about the future?
This is a phenomenal question. If we connect this to the bigger picture of human achievement, the answer is incredibly counterintuitive. Being fully present does not mean being physically inactive.
It does not mean apathy, lethargy, or giving up on the physical world.
In fact, the teachings introduce the concept of effortless action, or what modern sports psychologists might call being in the flow state.
When you align yourself completely with the present moment, when you aren't mentally distracted by terrifying anxiety over whether the project will fail or burning resentment over having to do the work in the first place, your action actually becomes totally frictionless.
You aren't fighting your own mind while you work. All of your cognitive energy is channeled into the task.
You're not leaking energy into the past or future.
Exactly. Think about two engineers tasked with designing a critical suspension bridge. The first engineer is driven by ego. He is stressed, terrified of making a mistake and ruining his career, obsessing over whether designing this bridge will finally get him the promotion he thinks he deserves.
His mind is a chaotic storm of future projections and egoic attachments.
The second engineer operates from presence. He is completely, deeply anchored in the now. He isn't worried about the promotion. He is focused entirely on the elegant physics of the steel in front of him. He is fascinated by the math. He is in a state of flow.
Which engineer is going to design a structurally sound, innovative, beautiful bridge? The present engineer, every time. Presence doesn't destroy ambition, it purifies it.
Presence creates brilliance. It creates highly effective, focused action. The teachings separate this into the inner goal and the outer goal. Your inner goal is always spiritual awakening and presence. Your outer goal is whatever worldly action you are taking.
When the inner goal is perfectly aligned, the outer goal takes care of itself with astonishing quality.
That is such a clarifying way to view ambition. And that brings us full circle, right back to the monumental quote we opened this entire deep dive with. Happiness is not in what you do, but in the feeling you put into doing it.
It completely, radically flips the societal narrative upside down. The entire machinery of our culture tells us, grind through the misery now, achieve external success, get the money, and then you will be happy.
The ego whispers, once I get that promotion, or once I finally buy that house, or once I find the perfect romantic partner, then the anxiety will stop. Then I will finally be at peace.
But as we all intuitively know, the ego's horizon is an illusion that constantly recedes. The absolute moment you get the dream car, the ego feels a brief, fleeting high, and then immediately says, okay, but my neighbor has a boat. I need a boat.
The finish line is always moving. The profound truth of these teachings is that they prove mathematically that happiness, which is synonymous with true, unresisting presence, must come first.
You don't do things to become happy. You bring the feeling of presence, the joy of the day, to the doing of the things. The peace is the foundation, not the roof.
And ironically, functioning from that foundation brings true, sustainable success.
There is a wonderfully humbling point near the end of the text that adds a funny but deeply profound note to all of this. It gently reminds you, you are not the center of the universe.
And truly realizing this isn't an insult, it's a massive, breathtaking relief. It takes the crushing pressure off your shoulders. You don't have to control everything.
And the text concludes that the meaning of life isn't about finding some complex intellectual answer to a grand philosophical puzzle. The meaning of life is simply to clear away the dense fog of your ego and become an open, clear channel for the universe. Just letting consciousness flow through you into the world, unobstructed.
Which culminates in the final, shortest, and perhaps most deceptively difficult summary of all 50 teachings. 3 words. Be as you are.
Not as you should be. Not as you hope to be in 10 years. Just be as you are, right now.
It sounds so incredibly simple on the surface, but as we've exhaustively explored today, fully embodying that requires dismantling almost everything we've been conditioned to believe about how to be a successful human being.
Let's gently recap this incredible, winding journey we've taken with the listener today. We started by realizing that our concept of time, specifically the psychological burden of obsessing over the past and future, is a painful illusion.
We discovered that the incessant voice in our head, the ego, is not our true self. It's just a dramatic, insecure imposter desperately trying to prove it exists by picking fights, hoarding possessions, and playing the victim.
We ventured into the basement and identified the pain body, that accumulation of old emotional suffering that we need to actively stop feeding with our toxic narratives and our stubborn resistance to reality.
We learned that the frustrating people in our lives are actually just mirrors reflecting our own unhealed hooks, and that giving someone the gift of deep, unjudging listening is the ultimate cure to interpersonal conflict.
And finally, we saw that we don't have to give up our ambitions to be peaceful. We can find brilliant, effortless flow in our work and our daily lives if we just focus intensely on the quality of the enter-senature. Now, instead of constantly obsessing over an imaginary finish line,
And as we wrap up, I want to offer a very gentle reminder to you, the listener. Please do not let your ego turn spiritual enlightenment or perfect presence into just another stressful benchmark that you have to frantically achieve by tomorrow morning.
don't beat yourself up because you got mad in traffic today. This practice isn't about achieving a state of permanent, glowing, levitating perfection.
It is simply about finding those tiny micro gaps between your thoughts today. Maybe it's just for 10 seconds tonight while you are standing at the sink washing the dishes.
You feel the physical warmth of the water on your hands. You actually hear the clinking of the ceramic plates. You watch the soap bubbles pop. And for 10 full seconds, there is no past. There is no future.
There is no problem to solve. There is just the water and the plates. That 10 seconds of pure reality is the beginning of the entire transformation.
I absolutely love that. Start with the dishes. Don't try to solve the universe. Just wash the dishes.
Just wash the dishes.
But I want to leave you with one final, slightly mind-bending thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. We know now that the ego absolutely loves having a grand project. It loves having a goal to strive and suffer for.
So what if the very act of trying so incredibly hard to become spiritually enlightened, reading all the books, agonizing over whether you are present enough, what if all of that striving is just another clever trick of your ego?
What if you don't actually need to work hard to achieve awakening at all? Because the profound peace you are exhaustively searching for is already sitting right there, right underneath all the chaotic noise of your mind, just patiently waiting for you to finally stop talking and notice it.
Think back to our X-ray analogy at the very beginning of the deep dive. Stop trying to furiously diagnose the murky, shifting shadows in your mind. Stop trying to fix the machine from inside the machine. Just step out of the diagnostic room entirely.
Step out of the room and just be as you are.
Exactly.
Until next time, take a deep conscious breath, go look at a tree, and stay in the now.